Rockstar, in an on-brand move, are avoiding taxes while claiming relief from the UK government. Bethesda keep on embarrassing themselves at every possible opportunity. Team Fortress 2 saw a resurgence in player interest, but because of the game's economy taking an utter nosedive, plus a ton more. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a bonus episode of the Roundup, because there has been a lot of news in the industry, and of course we are hiring. I'm going to keep on poking this one. If you're interested in a writer research role with our organization, take a look below, there is a job link. Okay, first off, let's talk about Rockstar. So, we covered GTA's new casino recently, that was very fun, but this is something else. TaxWatch, a UK watchdog, have done some digging around and found that Rockstar North have paid £0 UK corporation tax, while claiming £42 million in tax relief credits. So, Take-Two's subsidiary, Rockstar North, have apparently used basically standard accounting trickery to pay no corporation tax, and they've separately then made use of the video game's tax relief system to claim $42 million in tax credits. Simply put, Take-Two allocate their profits and funding rather interestingly across many different subsidiary companies and locations in order to pay as little tax as is possible. This stuff is entirely legal and above board, even if it does look suspicious, and being real with you, many large companies do this. Now, in this, TaxWatch argue that it would be much fairer if Rockstar North were credited for their work done in the UK by having the extremely high profits reflected by the subsidiary itself, which does sort of make sense, and this would ultimately leave Rockstar North paying, of course, significant amounts of tax and being unable to claim some of the tax credits that they do. Now, they claim that Rockstar North's use of the tax relief is a violation of the spirit of the scheme, which is intended to give UK developers, well, relief from taxation to the tune of about 25% of their expenditure if a game is certified as culturally British. Now, that certification is granted to games that are being made in the UK by UK citizens and optionally may have some cultural value to the UK. And this is a scheme that I am experienced in. We have put 2 games through it. Our 3rd game will go through it as well. And being real, it is vital and very useful to a lot of small and medium businesses, especially to indies in the UK. And schemes like this are something that multiple countries will compete with each other over. For an example, France and the UK are now in competition with their game industry tax relief systems. Now, going back to this, well, the cultural section is where TaxWatch might be jumping the gun a little bit. They complain that the game is set in the US and involves crime, referencing the murder of prostitutes and casting doubt on its certification. However, they're ignoring one very massive point in the criteria for the tax relief scheme, and that is the massive impact to the local economy that Rockstar North have. They pay 650 plus staff in Edinburgh, and they support the local games industry by being there. The spirit of the scheme, like every other tax relief scheme, is to give that industry financial incentives to exist in the given country, to employ local workers, and to generate value within the local economy. Now, while I think that paying tax in the country you're operating in is fair, there is a cold reality of business here. If Take-Two could make GTA in another country for cheaper, they would, and the UK would lose out on the employment. Countries do have to compete with each other as much as companies have to compete with each other, and if the UK decided to explicitly disallow Rockstar from claiming those credits or mandated that they paid additional tax because of their parent company's profits, then there's a very high chance that they would pretty much up sticks and move somewhere else rather than eat the cost. And basically that's one of the cold realities that we're dealing with here. And to go back to my recent example with France, I believe they are making their tax relief scheme 5% higher than the UK's one, and they're doing that to try to attract companies over. Now, we'll leave the French labour law stuff, which to a lot of companies, especially Rockstar, given how they treat their employees, it seems, wouldn't be a good thing. But in that case, if the UK says, here lads, you now have to pay all of this tax and you're getting less from your tax relief scheme, and then France says, hello, come over here, you'll get more from our tax relief scheme. That's essentially what the countries have to do to compete with each other. And I suppose it's weird, the countries themselves, like I'm sure the UK would want more tax money, but ultimately I think what they have to do is they have to weigh, yes, we could get more tax money if we changed our law to make it so that, the various loopholes being used could not be used, but then they have to weigh that against the economic impact of doing so, which would basically be, we'll get a bit more taxes now, but if these companies leave, then a lot of our local economies will lose a lot of businesses. and you can have tax, tax generation sort of knock-on effects from that. Now, of course, I'm not an economist, so I can't really weigh up the relative, pros and cons of both of those in an objective manner and give you a recommendation. All I can really say is those are like the aspects of the various parties involved will have to be thinking about. And I suppose that's what I'd love to hear your opinion on. Like, do you think Rockstar should be paying this tax? Do you think the UK government should force them to pay that tax, even if it could mean that Rockstar could move to another country? I'd be really interested to see like how you guys are going to navigate that one and where everyone thinks. Okay, next up, Bethesda. They have screwed up again, but this time Fallout 76 has nothing to do with it. I know, amazing. To celebrate QuakeCon, Bethesda have re-released the original Doom 1 through 3 on the PS4, Xbox One, and the Switch. And when players booted them up, they found they were required to log in to their Bethesda.net account in order to play. That's despite the games having zero online functionality, and on top of that, owners of the Doom 1 and 2 re-releases on the Xbox 360 found that they could no longer download them from their Xbox One to play, despite being available via backwards compatibility. Apparently there were mistakes here. Bethesda have said that asking for a login was supposed to be optional for players to avail of their Slayers Club reward program. They apologized for the Xbox 360 versions being unavailable and that both of those issues would be resolved quickly. And while the usual rule is to assume incompetence before malice, I mean, this is a bit much, isn't it? Now, saying that, it's easy to see how these mistakes could be made, especially if things were rushed to hit all of the consoles in time for QuakeCon, but it really doesn't bode that well for Bethesda's reputation. Whether it's incompetence or malice, I think one thing we do know is they are constantly messing up, and at the end of the day, that's the thing that matters. Now, there's one more note on Doom. Someone who accessed the game files noticed that the re-releases were actually running in the Unity engine. Now, rather than this being Doom remade in Unity, as some people seem to have believed, it appears that the game's engine had been ported to Unity, resulting in the same game but in a Unity wrapper, and that would be done to make it function on all platforms with today's standards for the correct resolutions and the support for new features. So that's what was going on there. But that is not all for the top people over at Bethesda, because Wolfenstein Youngblood has been in the news. It's a single-player and co-op game set in the Wolfenstein universe, and unlike its predecessors, it features a cash shop with a premium currency called gold bars that you can use to unlock cosmetics. Then it's got rather frustrating progression that is designed more around grinding and repeating generic missions in order to level up, and a soft currency silver coins that you can grind out for in-game upgrades and other cosmetics. And by many accounts, it seems like a game that was kind of rushed out, and while yeah, it benefits from the strengths of Wolfenstein's gameplay and world, it is crammed full of poor design choices in order to keep player engagement up over time, and to keep them close to the cash shop and drive a revenue tail. Now, this really could make for another example of a game with, potential but being damaged by the addition of systems that undermine its core gameplay loop, which pretty much is a lot of modern games. But there's another bit of controversy with Youngblood. As an offline game, some people have used Cheat Engine, which is a memory scanner / editor, to give themselves infinite coins. Now this, I would imagine, gives you the fun version of the game, where you can just get the upgrades immediately. That renders a lot of the, just a lot of stuff pointless in the game. Now there are like 8 skins for each weapon, there are 12 armor skins in total. Of all of these, 2 for each weapon, and 3 of the armor skins can only be purchased with gold bars, but almost everything is available for both, so being able to get all of those coins meant that you wouldn't have to use gold bars to buy some of the cosmetics. Now, guess what they changed with their very first patch? They fixed the exploit and seemingly nothing else. And I don't think I need to explain how grim it is that an offline game is being patched to disallow cheats just to make the microtransactions a bit more appealing. I mean, come on, what's next? We've got to be real here. Are we going to have to pay for access to the dev console in Elder Scrolls 6? I mean, look how much fun people had with the dev console, the things you could do with that. And in a game like this, like with Youngblood, there's no way they're going to give you a dev console and be able to do all of those fun things. And that really does make me sad as a fan of that franchise, and somebody who really used to like Bethesda's output. And then next up, we've got a reminder of how delicate game economies can be. Team Fortress 2's economy has had a bit of a massive wrench thrown in the works last week by an unfortunate bug. It's a really interesting story. Team Fortress 2, like other Valve games, allows for items to be sold for Steam Wallet funds via the marketplace. Now, to briefly explain, players can acquire crates by playing the game, and then you purchase a single-use key for like $2.50 to open up the crate and each crate has its own loot table. Now, the rarest items in the game are unusual weapons and unusual hats, and these come with like unique particle effects and stuff. Now, some of these are really rare and valued very highly, trading on the market for sometimes hundreds of pounds. Now, players can also trade the crates, but the crates are in extremely high supply, so they normally sit in the market for about 3 pence, which is like what, 4 cents, maybe 3 cents in the US. This all changed in a recent update. So, a bug caused certain crates to have a 100% unusual drop rate. So once players caught onto this, the market was flooded with items that were once extremely rare, and the prices dropped significantly, sometimes dropping to 10 or 20% of their usual value. And then, of course, the affected crates, well, they shot up in price as people started searching for them, and they jumped the price up by like a magnitude of like 100, from pennies to a few pounds. Obviously, players went wild with this and unboxed loads of unusuals, either to make a quick buck or to finally get the item that they wanted. At least one third-party site paused trading once knowledge of the glitch actually came out, and a few hours later, Valve flat-out disabled trading to stem the tide and the economy going down. And I think this is so interesting. A simple bug crashed the games market and wiped out thousands and thousands of pounds of value. There's no doubt that some traders and collectors personally took a pretty massive hit here in terms of like the value of their, well, portfolio. And while this is an in-game cosmetic item market, it does function almost identically to real-world markets, but the value is basically just controlled by a single entity, the game developer. There are some conspiracies floating around here, with some suggesting that this was intentional to increase the number of transactions in the market because Valve take per transaction fees, and I think that might be a little bit of a reach. At least one post I saw claimed that this was done to devalue the market, so that when they announced Team Fortress 3, players won't feel as attached to 2 and will move over, and I don't think that's true at all. I think that's just sort of dramatic wishful thinking. All the same though, this does show that the value of digital items can change with a snap of a finger, and it's worth keeping that in mind, and that, yeah, whether you can cash out or not, people do assign a value to those items. And then last but not least, some quickfire news. So a while ago we touched on the US-China tariff situation and how it could affect gaming. Nintendo have already chosen their answer by moving a lot of production over to Vietnam. Well, Sony have thrown in their hat, and they are now warning that in the US they might have to hike up their prices. This would result in Sony hardware costing more in the US, either for Sony, for their distributors, or for the end consumer. Hopefully, this will not be pushed to the consumer, as they will not want a repeat of what happened with the very expensive launch PS3. After all, with a lower price, they did manage to ship over 100 million PS4s, which was another tidbit that happened quite recently. Then next, David Cage, CEO of Quantic Dream. Quite a character, a bit of a laughingstock, a bit of an interesting sort of auteur-like character in the world of gaming. Well, he actually was very on the mark when speaking to GameSpot about the future of games. He believes that reflections, lighting, and shadow are going to be key in making better-looking games, instead of this big race to higher resolutions like, 4K and 8K. He's quite the character in how he says it, but he's right, and this is what he says. I know that people talk about 8K these days and blah 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 blah. I would rather put the focus on lighting. Sure is how David Cage talks, and I think he's pretty much on the money. It's those like realistic lighting and effects. That's what really sells a scene, and I suppose maybe that's why ray tracing has been such a thing recently. Then finally, according to an indie developer who is making a game called Skatebird, Epic are avoiding their game because they had promised Steam keys on their Kickstarter. So, what do we see from this? Well, maybe Epic are just focusing on true exclusives and not poaching from Kickstarter. It's hard to tell. Maybe they've learned some lessons from their past mistakes on the PR. Maybe they don't want to do another Phoenix Point or Shenmue. Hard to tell, but that's at least something that happened. So, there you go. That'll do us for today. A whole bunch more topics. There was the other report we put out on Crash Team Racing, and Bobby slipping in a cash shop as Bobby likes to do. If you are interested in working with us, there was a jobs form link down below for a writer/researcher position, so you can check that out. And yeah, with that, thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.